Many of you in the audience do business or buy Microsemi products, and again, I think how many, I would like just by a raise of hands, is how many of you, when you hear the name Microsemi, think of a semiconductor manufacturer that primarily supports the aerospace and defense market? Probably most of you, right? And that was greater than half the audience. And that was my first introduction to Microsemi in my distribution years, is that's really where Microsemi was primarily doing business. Now, we still focus on that market extremely, as an extremely important end market for us, but through mergers and acquisitions, we've changed and transformed the company over basically the last 7 years. It was 7 years ago this week, or last week, there's the disclaimer there. 7 years ago this week, we acquired a company called Actel, who makes FPGAs for the commercial and military markets. Essentially, through the transformation, we've encountered a lot of things as it relates to what does end of life mean, and what are the end markets that we serve require from an end of life perspective. So hopefully I can make a few points today that resonate with the audience and kind of give you a view at some of the complexities that we have to deal with this issue, because it's different. Our end markets are really defense aero, communications, industrial, and data center. And I'll take you through, again, I think it's important to grasp this whole concept, is to give you a little bit of a background on how we've evolved and the challenges we face as we evolve. So, you know, things for a semiconductor company to consider as it relates to product life cycle. You know, what is the company's life cycle end-of-life strategy? Is there a process to determine when to EOL a product line or a product family? Does the company follow industry standards to implement? Because there are standards. I think I heard Willie say earlier, 41% of end-of-life parts are not, there's no notification to the customer that's clear. That's astonishing, right? And I don't know what to attribute that to, but maybe there's just not standards that are being followed in rolling these out. So, you know, that's something that we certainly have a process on internally. And then does the company have a post-EOL strategy? So today, we've made acquisitions to increase our business in the communication space. As well as 2 years ago, we bought a company called PMC Sierra, which is now brought us into the data center business, and that's a very dynamic business. And then our industrial business is, you know, kind of a result of all of those acquisitions, because most of them play at some level in the industrial space, medical being a key end market for us. So now to kind of take it to the next slide, which is just talks about the end market requirements. You know, 75% of Microsemi's revenue is related to markets that require long or very long lead times, and in other words, life cycle. The communication space, 5 to 10 year product life cycle. A lot different if you go where our legacy business has been, where we're looking at life cycles of 10 to 35 years. You know, weapons that were sold to leading countries when they were designed are now sold to secondary markets, and those technologies could be 25 to 30 years old, and change is extremely slow. For instance, there's an SG1524, a PWM controller that we designed in 1974 that is still in high demand from an end customer perspective. That's 43 years. So that's even beyond the 35-year life cycle that's identified. Industrial tends to be 7 to 12 years, but oftentimes it goes beyond 12. And data center is completely different. That's a 2-year-old business for us. And you're talking about 3 to 5 year life cycles where entire data centers are redesigned from the ground up every 3 years. And technology in that space is obsolete because of the requirements in the market. That's not typically our decision. That's the customer and the customer base needing to keep pace with the industry that they're in to drive their success in the market. So that is really almost a reverse situation where we've got to be very on the leading edge and can't be investing in older technologies, because if we don't invest in new technologies, we're going to lose. So that kind of gives you the overview of the challenge that we face as a company, serving diverse markets with diverse needs, but life cycle is an important piece of every one of those markets. Just it's different. And I think a really key point is the growing cost of new technologies. I saw an article this week. Global Foundries is talking about building a 5-nanometer fab, a 7-nanometer fab, and we don't play in that space, but probably cost about $10 billion to build. A 5-nanometer fab is going to cost between $12 to $15 billion. And then this week, TSMC just announced plans to build a 3-nanometer fab in Taiwan. That's, again, likely going to cost $15 to $20 billion. So what happens in those cases is the investments need to be in the newer technologies, not sustaining older technologies, right? And so I think that's one of the things that's caused end of life to go up for customers, because we have, specifically in the FPGA space, for us, and this isn't, I'm not pitching here, it's just a fact of life, is our latest family, we are very much more conservative in process nodes, and we're right now just entering the 28-nanometer space. So we're trailing on the technology curve, which I think from an EOL perspective, it should be of some level of comfort from an FPGA perspective, because and again, some of our competitors have a different strategy there, where they're chasing the 7-nanometer business and the 7-nanometer process, which I think there's already been some evidence that that's led to increased EOL strategies and increased EOL acceleration. So I think it's important to consider, where is the technology going and how's that going to impact EOL, in addition to the continued merger and acquisition activity that takes place out there. So one of the questions, or one of the points made earlier, is is there a process that a semiconductor company has as it relates to EOL? And then we at Microsemi follow the JEDEC standard to hopefully make it easier for our customers. In that standard says there needs to be a minimum of 6 months from notice to place final orders, and an additional 6 months for shipment. That's at a minimum. So that's our standard policy, but there are a couple of our business units that will go beyond that because of the customer activity that's involved. But in general, as a general rule, that's the JEDEC standard minimum. You need to state a reason for the discontinuance. So if it's because of declining volume, you need to say that. If it's because of a raw material issue or a packaging issue or whatever it might be, you need to state that. You need to suggest a replacement if applicable. Okay, and that oftentimes is something that is hard to do with older technology, right? And then what we do is we take the product, the PDNs, and we post them in different locations. We actually put a couple of our business units put the discontinuation notice on the website. That's our FPGA group and our discrete business. And then, for all of the products, we encourage customers to go to our website and sign up to be notified for all PDNs that we submit. So, we're a little bit, I would say, shy about broadcasting all of our EOLs to the end market, because that's fodder for the competition. So we're encouraging customers to come to our website, sign up. It takes about 30 seconds to sign up for notifications, and then you'll get a sign-on and access to an extranet that will, then you'll get all of the PDNs forwarded to you. And then that's the last point, we distribute the PDNs from our CRM as well as to our distributor network, and then with the ability for the customer to self-subscribe on our website. So that's the point I was making there. I don't think we can commit 10, 20, 30 years as one of the earlier questions, but we are seeing a lot of success on products where maybe the end of life was 3, 4 years ago, and there's still demand coming in. And now we've actually, with Arrow Supply Assurance, we've
we've taken one of our product lines that we're going to announce an end of life on a year from now, and we're going to do it through our supply assurance and have them handle the whole thing. They can do the analytics and go figure out how many we need to build for that end of life. But and I think there's an advantage to that because, as Tyler said, it's better to have more parts than less parts. We think if we went to every individual customer and said that's the end of life, we might build 10,000, but Arrow might come back and say, we've done an assessment and we'd like you to build 25,000 of those, and that'll be something that can extend the life cycle. So we see a lot of value in that, and we want to become more engaged, and then sell the benefit to the customer, right? I think there's an absolute benefit when understood properly. And so with that, thank you for listening.